Snafu is a podcast that contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Snafu, where the situation's normal, all fucked up. This is the podcast where we tell you stories of true crime, true mystery, and the truly fucked up shit that happens every single day that we just forget about. So, we decided we wanted to remind you. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Corey. Thanks for coming back for this week's episode, guys. We hope you've been having some wonderful weeks behind you.
Yeah, welcome back. Thanks for giving us a listen. We're glad to be here because we've definitely been hiding away inside, getting away from this heat all week.
Says you. I've been trying to get out there as much as I can.
Oh my god, I couldn't even do it for like an hour. I started getting dizzy at night. Like, it was so crazy. I need a pool. Anyways, I guess it's just given me a lot of time to be inside and do a lot more research and a lot more work on this and find a lot more messed up stories we might do in the future. And, speaking of which, that also gave me a lot of time to send out some of the stickers that we got. I told you guys if we did a review and you went online and you sent us a picture and you told us where to send it, we could. And so,
yeah, you just got to get a hold of us on Instagram or email or...
Yeah, all that good stuff.
The Twitter machine.
Roll into DMs, something like that.
I don't know what those kids say nowadays.
Oh, you're fun.
I just used to do AIM, so...
Oh, God.
Uh-oh. Well, no, that's ICQ. Never mind. Older program. There's an old program called ICQ, and ICQ, the letters. And
it used to yell, uh-oh?
It used to yell, uh-oh, anytime you got a message.
That sounds terrible.
It was the best thing in the world. And it was also funny because you couldn't hit the backspace button if you typed a message.
That sounds like a terrible program.
Oh, no, it was awesome.
Okay, but I guess the point being, yeah, we got the stickers. Just if you want yours, it's free. All you have to do is leave us a nice review and let us know where you want your stickers to go. So it's that simple.
Yeah, we'll get them to the, in the mail in the next 3 to 5
days, something days, a day, number,
something
mumble.
Like that. We got work. We got our own jobs too, so...
But like I said, despite that, I've been sitting here doing research, getting this week's episode put together, and I think that we've got a new story for you guys that you might just like.
Yeah, it should be a fun one today. Well, sort of. I mean, I'm not going to like it because it involves the medical profession, which is disgusting.
And you know how Corey loves to freak out
about
that.
If I could when I go break into Area 51, I'm just going to download my body and my brain into a robot body and not have to deal with this shit anymore.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. You're just literally going to die if you did that,
No,
right?
If we go to Area 51, we're not going to die. We're all rolling out there with some aliens and some robots and
some
spaceships.
Naruto runs and something like that.
I don't know what that is. I just know we're going to storm Area 51. I've already got my plane tickets. Of course, it's to Phoenix because it's a cheaper airport to fly into right now because everyone's going to Vegas to get closer, but we'll drive. It'll be nice.
I'll wave from the car as I watch them shoot you all down.
They can't kill us all.
They can't kill you all. You're right. but most of you.
There's
sure.
2.5 million of us. They can't kill us all.
Oh my god. All right. Let's get into it. What Corey was trying to say is that we are diving for the first time into medical serial killers.
So it just means gross.
It just means I can literally say anything like body related or medical related and Corey's going to freak out. It's going to be super fun.
I'm just going to go into it as disgusting. I'm going to be throwing up.
Yep.
It's going to be worse.
So now you can see why I actually wanted to do it, because normally this is not our type of serial killer where we talk about these killings, medicinal. They kind of get to me because it's literally could happen to anybody. It's not like one of those serial killers who has a type.
There's a 6% chance I'm going to fall out of my chair and pass out during this episode.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think we should just go ahead and get into it before Corey literally passes out.
It's getting close.
All right, Corey.
The walls are closing in, Doc.
Why don't you start?
In today's episode, we're taking a look at Niels Hoegel, which is the funnest word to say, a nurse who wanted to play a superhero and became an evil villain instead. So basically what Two-Face said is kind of right.
Yeah, so Corey's sounding extra dramatic, but in all honesty, this is like for real.
It's
this
not
is what
extra
this
dramatic.
Guy does.
The story is just the right dramatic.
Okay.
Yeah, as Shannon was saying, this is our first dive into the medical serial killers. So we're just going to kind of tell you a little bit about them, and I'm going to kind of make sure I'm keeping up on my fluids so I don't pass out. It's going to be great, guys. Woohoo. Typically these killers...
Hydrate or die.
Yeah, no, I'm just... Typically, these killers are healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, paramedics, people that Corey have nightmares about, and healthcare assistants.
Yeah, like the caretaker you might have come into your grandma's house every day.
Yeah, or when you go for a physical, those people. These particular killers use their work in order to gain access to the preferred killing method and to their victims. They have better access to lethal drugs, as well as trusting patients who are usually hurt or sick or incapacitated in some way.
Yeah, so just like I was saying, like, yet again, here's a killer that doesn't run a normal MO. It's not like Ted Bundy where he's looking for a girl with brown hair that, is divided down the middle. These are killers who literally use the advantage of patients being at their hands, like right there, whoever's coming to them. Like it doesn't normally have to have a specific type, to be honest. And that just makes it all the more scary.
In fact, more than half of all medical killer cases involve the use of some lethal injection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't do needles at all, so now I'm going to have this in my mind.
Says the guy with a tattoo, but okay.
Yeah, I was young and dumb.
So according to the presentation giving at the annual meeting of American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, so 72% of these cases will take place within a hospital setting. We've got 20% taking place in nursing homes, which surprised me. I would think it would be a lot higher, especially with all the reports you see on the news about bad care. And
I think that's just sheer negligence and inability to do things right.
Also, it might be age. It's harder to catch a murder when you're expecting some people of a certain age to die on the reg.
Yeah.
And then finally, only 6% tend to occur within the patient's actual home. So that caregiver thing we just freaked you out about, probably not actually going to happen.
It's also 2019. Doctors don't make house calls anymore. Often you'll find these types of killers being referred to as angels of mercy. Or, much more cooler, angels of death.
It's just a freaking terrible terminology.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely garbage. It pretty much comes from the idea that, maybe the killer sees their victim as suffering and that, in a way, they're providing an act of mercy to the patient by ending their suffering, killing them.
Yeah.
And, it's really an interesting notion. It definitely seems to be what many killers in this category tend to claim once they're on trial.
Yeah, because usually that sounds better than, I like to kill people. So I don't know. I personally think it's a sob story. It's something they always tell on the stand in order to make normal people feel better. Normal people go, well, why'd you do it? And they can understand. Well, I just felt like they were so sick and they were hurting and I just wanted to end their suffering. And so normal people, they have empathy for that. And in reality, I think it's a cop-out. I think it's something that people want to hear instead of, your grandma was at my disposal and I could do whatever I wanted to her, and I did,
Phrasing. But yeah, it's definitely a cop-out, like saying your favorite color is blue. But it is sometimes the reason that's given.
Just like some people's favorite color is blue.
Yeah. And those people's motivations are considered to be mercy killings. The killer may believe that their patient is suffering or is beyond help. Whether their belief is delusional or not, because they might very well believe this despite it not actually being the truth, they see this kill as a favor. A gift. Simply a mercy.
On the flip side of that, you can debate that Dr. Kevorkian did do this. So like we said, maybe it's a cop-out. Maybe some of them really feel like this. Corey says maybe they're delusional and they only imagine that they're the only ones that can save these people. Just because you're suffering from cancer or just because you're 90 years old doesn't mean somebody needs to Rambo it into your house and put you out of your misery.
Yeah, charging in there with their super needle and their cape.
But, at the same time, like I said, Dr. Kevorkian, here he is, going into homes of people who asked him to do assisted suicide, basically. And in that case, yeah, it's a mercy killing. So
they actually have an assisted suicide program. I believe it's in the Netherlands or something like that.
We have a few states, in fact, that actually do that. And what's the sad part about it is it's only a few states. Our country is so big. So people literally at the end stage of their life, not even talking about age specifically, a lot of people who are very, very ill, some of them do find themselves, instead of spending that time with family or getting things in order, they end up having to spend all this money just to move so that they can have a quicker death somewhere else. It's insane.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about today. So
some of the other motivations that they can have, though, are, pretty much just money. Insurance scams kind of really come to mind for this.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine a doctor getting in on, with patients on insurance scams and then having access to all these patients?
Although, I mean, I guess it would have to be the patient's family that they're in on, not the patient, because if you're dead, you're not getting your life insurance. That one doesn't hold as much water.
And also the same thing, I think, if you're thinking about people making money and you're like a conspiracy theorist like me, you have a serious fear of black market organ dealers.
Like when Charlie the Unicorn, they took his kidney.
They did.
Yeah, do you remember that?
No, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
You've never seen Charlie the Unicorn.
I'm sure I have, but it was probably a very vague, like, off-topic, like, thing that you're doing right now, and I can't think of it.
They took his kidney.
Okay.
Black market.
Yeah, no, and although, like, I say all conspiracy theory, like, honestly, that happens. That freaking happens around the world, and, you know, that is a sign of people killing in order to make money off your body in the medical situation.
Yeah, and sometimes the killer is just sadistic and kills for that sole reason. These people get pleasure from having control over the helpless or weak. Where better to do this than the medical profession? Literally everyone that comes to you is either old, hurt, sick, or, turning to you and trusting you with their life during some sort of procedure. Yeah,
seriously, at some point, every single one of us has had or will have to do this with a doctor or a dentist or whatever. Like, that's the extent. Like, we forget how much we entrust our whole being into the hands of a medical professional. You're getting your wisdom teeth out and they're knocking you out with drugs. Hey, guess what? There's nothing you can do.
That's why I bring someone with me anytime I go down.
They're just in on it.
You're taking the day off too, buddy.
But, so those are a couple motives that are there. And then we have just a few more for medical killers. So another motive is that sometimes this gives the killer sexual gratification. I think this is a lot more rare, especially when it comes to medical killers, but it's not unheard of. And in fact, one of the most famous cases of this was Nurse Jane Toppin. So she would actually give the killing drug to her victim, and then she'd climb into bed with them and then hold them close to her chest as they died. Like, it gave her the biggest rush, this sense of control, but like a sexual gratification to it as well.
That's weird.
Finally, we have the malignant hero motive. So this is a person who becomes excited at the attention one gains when they're in an emergency situation. So these killers will typically administer an unnecessary drug to a patient that will then cause a life-threatening effect. The killer can then make an effort to either save them or look like they're trying to save them. They might even resuscitate them. And then in the end, in doing this, they look like a hero. So whether the person survives or not, the staff looks at you with, admiration, you get attention. If you lose someone, you get sympathy. And again, it's not just your coworkers. Like, imagine, everyone that has ever dated a nurse or a doctor has thought about what they do at work and has, felt a certain way. We can't all do this. And we feel bad for you when you have to go through, like, saving lives or if you lose someone. So it's just this, like, a glory hero complex that some people get from being in the middle of this, except for now they're causing it. At the same time, a lot of people will actually refer to this as being a professional version of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. You're literally causing someone to be sick, even though they're not, in order for you to get gratification out of it. So despite the fact that I'm sure as long as there have been medical professions and professionals out there doing medicine, there's been medical killings all this time.
See, people wonder why I don't trust doctors. It's this.
But, however, I'm going to freak you out some more.
No.
Professionals say that the number of healthcare-related serial killings is on the rise.
And that's why my time in the hospitals and doctor's office is on the fall.
Okay, but I think perhaps this can only be said because we're actually tracking it. We're looking for it. We have medical systems in place in hospitals for this purpose so that you shouldn't be able to just get away with killing people. You shouldn't be able to just get your hands on drugs or access to a patient that's not yours. So I think maybe we have a system in place that's a little better at catching this, and maybe that's why the numbers go up. But that's just me. But the guy we're going to be talking about today, Niels Hoegel. Niels Hoegel has been hitting the headlines for the last few years as the number of his killings just keep going up and up and up. It's seriously insane.
Is he in America?
Nope. So let's tell you about Germany's most prolific recent serial killer.
All right, boys and girls, so strap in for this one because I'm going to hit the floor real quick. Niels Hoegel was born on December 30th, 1976 in Wilhelmshaven, Germany. A nice little town of about 76,000 people, and its biggest claim to fame is that it's a harbor town on the North Sea.
Yeah, there's some other, there's mathematicians and a lot of, Nazi-related stuff, but
yeah, we're not going to talk about that. We've got our own problems. Niels was raised by both his parents and has one older sister. The siblings were raised in what Niels calls a protected childhood. He claims that they were never exposed to violence at home. Instead, many describes his family as warm and stable. Teachers considered him to be a normal student, a kid more interested in football, and I'm assuming it's soccer because it's Germany, than, American football, than his classes, but he was generally thought of as friendly and fun, as well as pretty helpful.
Yeah, he's just a normal kid, which is, I think a lot of people who listen to true crime too often keep expecting us to say, oh, they were abused, this bad, terrible thing happened, like this, there's always a reason, and it stems from their childhood. In this case, everything I found, no, nothing about that could be said for his family.
Although his mother was a legal assistant, his father was a nurse at St. Wilhad Hospital in Wilhelmshaven, and this inspired Niels to become a nurse as well. Niels went on to get a college degree and training in the medical field and succeeded in getting his nursing license. He received his training at St. Wilhad Hospital, where his father had actually worked. He got there in 1994 and would eventually stay on as a hired nurse. He'd work there until 1999. He also took a part-time job as a paramedic from 98 to 2000.
Yeah, and during all this time, Niels seemed to be fine. Like we said, like even growing up, there's not much special to this guy. He's a short, pudgy man with shaggy black hair. It kind of covers a malformed left ear. If you ever look at the pictures we put up, you'll see that. He's got these large eyes. He's, got inherent dark circles. Kind of looks, the pictures you'll see now are him going through trial and case and he's been in prison. But in all honesty, I think those look very natural on him, like his skin tone. Anyways.
He's swarthy.
If Benjamin Franklin was mentioning who he was, yeah, I guess he's swarthy. But
no offense to our German listeners, just our founding fathers were dicks.
Yeah, go read some of their quotes. Like, that is a legit quote of Benjamin Franklin talking about Germanic people. And he's like, they're the swarthy ones. Whatever. Okay. So anyways, just to end up describing him, yeah, he's pudgy, bulbous. He's just not someone, like, passing by that you're really going to pay attention to.
Does he have a mustache?
No. Well, he kind of has like a thick beard growth that kind of happens.
Okay, so he's not making burgers. But
he constantly like shaves it. Anyways, he's just the kind of man that failed to really make an impression on his coworkers. And in the end, after, 1994 to 1999, all they really seemed to recall was that he was nice. So
ouch.
Yeah, so after 5 years of working as a nurse, nice. It's nice to say, oh, my coworker's nice, but shouldn't they be saying something about your work ethic, your jobs? He's a great nurse. He's good with patients. Like, nice is like a cop-out.
Yeah, like saying your favorite color is blue.
Yep. So Niels left St. Wilhad and began work at a hospital in the northwestern city of Oldenburg between 1999 and 2002. And that really seemed to be the start of when Niels began to slip. At that point, the new hospital seemed to be overwhelming him. He gets married at some point. And he has a daughter. Aww. So, like, that's always a mounting pressure on somebody. You're working, full time, and then you have a family, or, like, you get married, and then you start a family. Like, it's just a lot. And he's in his 20s, and, he's not actually handling it very well. And, in fact, he gets really bad depression. He starts suffering from anxiety, and he begins to start having panic attacks over the fear of his own death.
Yeah, that's me too.
Well, unlike you, he starts self-medicating in the form of drinking really heavily in order to resolve this issue for himself. So it's not like he's in the medical profession. He could go to a doctor. He could see a therapist. He could get some medicine. He doesn't do this. He just starts drinking.
Well, at that time, though, was it really kind of cover that mental health was actually a thing? This is like 2002. We were around.
This is like 2002. Yes, he could have gotten medical help, and he should have. And honestly, like, all hospitals should be going out of their way to demand that their staff gets that help. These people see terrible things day in and day out. That's why I said, like, not all of us can be a nurse or a doctor. And the things these people see and have to deal with, it's burnout worthy. So it makes sense why he's having issues, but he's resolving them in all the wrong way. So within the hospital, this time, Niels isn't gaining a nice guy reputation anymore. He's not just some, schmuck who you don't recognize. This time, his demeanor is a lot more demanding, and his behavior really struck his coworkers as, like, more than odd.
Ooh, odd is worse than being called nice.
Yeah, so he ended up giving off the impression that what he was really trying to do was just impress the people around him with his medical knowledge. I mean, he's going so far as to ask 2 female trainee nurses to watch him during one of his resuscitation attempts. You know, you don't normally do that. You don't nudge somebody in the shoulder and go, hey, watch me go be a hero.
Yeah, no,
You know,
that's
let
not
me impress
something.
you. So there's a former colleague, Frank Locksterman, and he said that it was obvious that Niels wanted to play the action hero and save people. So here he was being more active in the hospital. He's not just a nice guy who nobody notices, but he is starting to get another nickname, and they're just starting to consider him to be a jinx.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so before Niels arrived at this hospital had a really good
You
reputation.
don't want anyone in the hospital called a jinx. It's not the thing I would want to hear a nurse saying.
You don't want to keep someone around that a nurse would consider a jinx.
And you don't want to say that in front of patients.
So like I was saying, before Niels even arrived at this hospital in Oldenburg had a really good reputation. Once he gets there, the numbers of emergency resuscitation and deaths from cardiac arrest, they had more than actually doubled. And Locksterman wasn't the only one that was getting weird, suspicious feelings about Niels. The coincidence of Niels being on duty and then patients requiring life-saving procedures had other hospital workers actually giving him the nickname of Death Hoegel.
Uh-oh.
Again, not something you freaking want your coworkers or to hear someone in a hospital like mutter about a nurse.
You know patients are wandering around and they're going to hear that like chit-chat that nurses do.
I remember, because I did time in a medical profession, and our hospital was going through some issues, and I remember multiple staff going, hey, honestly, I think if I had the ability to go to another hospital, if I was sick, I would. And that's a scary moment.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that.
No, you don't. Like, that's the whole point about the reputation of this hospital. Nowadays, hospitals aren't just, it's not something just run by the government and they're just going to do their best and all be regulated. Like, you can go online, you could judge hospitals. If you hear a hospital is shitty, you might not go to that hospital. Maybe you'll go to the one down the road that has a better reputation. And so, you know, for a hospital to have a good reputation and then all of a sudden the numbers start changing, things start going up, that's a problem. And in the end, it seemed like none of the staff that was so suspicious of him ever reported any of this activity to the police. Which makes sense, because how often do people see something weird at work and then their first thought is, I'm going to go to the police? Like, I know that sounds odd, but like, you know, you really should be going to people who can actually manage, you know, it's not your job. That's out of my pay range. I'm staying in my lane. So they finally did go to the staff in the hospital that was like managing staff, and they told them of their suspicions, but nothing like ever really seemed to come of it. Like, Locksterman reported suspiciously high levels of potassium in a patient of Niels after one of these resuscitation attacks. Like, after something bad happened, he goes and looks through his blood test and he's like, holy crap, this shouldn't be here. Like, what's this about? And he does report it, but
that's not what you want to have in a hospital. And hospital staff, they're kind of, they're not doing anything, are they?
No. At this point, no, the managing staff did nothing.
And when we talk about behavior, that should be reported, we mean excessive. We don't mean that maybe on a few of Niels' shifts, someone might have had a cardiac arrest. That's typical hospital shit. But no, it's that whenever he's on board, it's coming a lot more. For instance, on one single weekend during Niels' shifts, there were 14 resuscitations and 5 deaths. Niels wasn't punished or fired or even investigated. He was simply moved to another ward.
Yeah, that's a major red flag right there.
Yeah.
Like, that's saying, we know, we see this. We're just not even going to deal with it, though. We're just going to move you.
It was only after several more incidents requiring resuscitations in his new department that a department head finally made the decision that Niels could no longer have contact with patients and that he needed to go somewhere else. Eventually,
why don't you call the police? Why don't you fire this guy? They literally said, we've already switched you to a new department. At this point, we just can't let you even interact with patients. So you're a useless fucking nurse.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't just let him go. But what they did is the managing staff came to Niels and pressured him to look for work elsewhere. They even provided him with positive recommendations in order to help him leave faster. We don't want you in our hospital. You can go be someone else's problem.
Yeah, we know that you literally kill people and you're making us look bad.
And this seems like the worst way to approach it.
So normally a hospital has the responsibility to be reporting this. But what we start to see more and more often when it comes to these medical killers is that this all gets covered up. again and again. I mean, look at any, Angel of Mercy. You'll see that they flip-flop from hospital or like medical practice clinic. And each time they'll have like good recommendations. The hospital is more than happy to get rid of you because that way, as long as there's no report done, there's no investigation, then, their record doesn't get bad. Their reviews don't go bad and they continue to make money.
Yeah. And, when they're giving these references to Niels, they're saying that he's someone who can work independently and conscientiously. During his time at the Oldenburg Clinic, there were no internal investigations started into the increased number of patient deaths or Niels' strange behavior. By October 2002, Niels applied to the Municipal Hospital of Delmenhorst and was working there by December 15th of that year. He started in the intensive care unit.
Great.
He's working conscientiously and independently, so we're going to put you there. By December 22nd, he would have already committed his first murder at this hospital, but it would be a long time before he was ever caught. Niels' behavior remained erratic at his new hospital. He soon gained the nickname of the Resuscitation Rambo.
Yeah, can you imagine like that?
Sylvester Stallone? No, and he would barrel down other coworkers in order to get to a patient during a code. At one point, because of the many resuscitations he had worked on, his coworkers rewarded him with a necklace made out of injection tubes that he would wear with pride because this is a creepy fucking hospital thing.
Yeah, keep this in your mind. I mean, we already told you he's a killer. This is something that seems to become really like creepy later on. The fact that he's wearing this with pride. They might not have known what they have just done, but they basically gave a killer mementos.
Yeah, they probably didn't know what they were doing. His actions, of course, garnered suspicion at his new hospital. A former colleague, Susanna, would later say that, in the beginning, you just think it is fate. But at some point, you grow distrustful.
Yeah, you're in a medical field. People have incidents, cardiac arrests, there's codes. People die. And that's an unfortunate part of working in the medical field. But like she's saying, like there's that normal number, and then at some point you just have to be like, this isn't right.
Yeah. And, many of the hospital staff never reported anything. One nurse told her superiors she was suspicious of Niels, but no action was ever taken and the nurse never followed it up. Later, a doctor would testify that he never thought Niels was suspicious because of his constant attendance to resuscitations. He did find him to be a bit overzealous, that's a quote from him, but in wanting to be part of the care of the more critical patients. The doctor also recalled Niels was often unusually emotional.
Yeah, and can you really blame a doctor for not noticing that a nurse seems to really enjoy their job or work really hard? Like, just
they want to be helpful.
Yeah, so he's a little overzealous, but maybe he just really loves what he does. Yeah. He's not his nanny. He's not looking over this guy every day.
And the doctor also recalled that Niels was often unusually emotional about the deaths of his patients, recalling that on one occasion, Niels took 2 patients who had died to the morgue and returned completely distraught.
Yeah, signs.
Yeah,
Everywhere there's signs. Yeah. So, God, okay. Yeah, I mean, you're always suspicious of this guy, and then all of a sudden, that's one weird thing to say. 2 people? He had to take 2 people down to the morgue?
It didn't say that it was 2 people that he was responsible for, just...
Yeah, but it's still 2 people, 2 bodies at the same time having to go down to the morgue, and he took them and comes back super distraught. Now, again, you might say, hey, he's really upset that he lost these people. He's a really good nurse, and he works really hard, and he cares. But 2 people shouldn't die at the same time enough that maybe you should have to take him down to the morgue. And why is he doing this if it's going to upset him so much?
Yeah, I don't know.
So... on June 23rd, 2005, so we're 3 years into working at this hospital, and he's finally caught red-handed. So Niels was in with a patient when nurse Renata T. walks in, and she discovers him standing over a lung cancer patient. Now, at this point, Niels had turned off the patient's life support system, and right next to him in the trash can was 4 empty vials of medication that's not prescribed for this patient. So Nurse Renata took a blood sample, and then she, from the patient, like, okay, why are you injecting him with that you shouldn't be doing? I'll just take a blood sample, send it off, we'll see what it gets.
Yeah.
When the test results returned, it showed dangerously high doses of heart medication for a lung cancer patient. And the doctor and nurse in charge, they even had to get together because at this point, here's proof. Like, here's something's wrong. We need to meet up. So The doctor and the nurse in charge end up meeting together to discuss the situation, but together they just decide to let Niels finish out his shift.
Oh, yeah, great idea. No.
Yeah, this is weird and odd, suspicious, but like we don't want to call another nurse or something in, right? So that patient died the following day, and he's still working. 2 days later, on June 24th, Niels would go on to kill his final victim, Renata Roper, who was 67, with a lethal dose of adrenaline. To top this off, you think, okay, this is the end for him. He's not going to be working as a nurse anymore. He literally is killing people when you caught him red-handed. But from the police report that I saw, like, that's not the case. He actually, even though he's not going to end up working at this hospital anymore, he goes on to do part-time work in nursing homes in Wilhelmshaven and Friedberg in 2007 and 2008.
Oh,
and
goody.
he also goes back to his other paramedic job in 2008.
Even better.
So literally, he is working, you've caught him red-handed in 2005, and he's working the next 2 to 3 years in the medical field still has his nursing license, still continuing. People are still hiring him. It's crazy. So, but finally, Niels would face a trial in 2008, and he was charged with attempted murder. And he received a term of 7.5 years. So according to them, like, they saw 2 people died. That's what they basically saw, and that's what they're charging him with.
Yeah.
But really, this is just the beginning, the crack in the dam. Because like I said, they have no idea, and they've just barely caught this guy. He's got 7.5 years. He's going to be walking out in 7.5 or less. But the lucky thing about this is that it's being publicized just a little bit in Germany. And soon alleged victims' families began to come forward. You know, suddenly people who had lost loved ones unexpectedly at either of these 2 hospitals that Niels worked at suddenly kind of realized, hey, maybe their loss may have not been an accident, and maybe it wasn't a decision by God. In fact, maybe it came at the hands of a man playing God. I mean, when that just distress you completely to, you know, you're already upset. You've already lost a loved one. This is terrible. But then years down the road to realize that someone might have killed them. You might not have had any reason to lose that person.
You know, it's not something you want to hear years down the road.
Yeah, and it's not something you want to have to chase down either. Like, why didn't somebody catch this in the first place? So while Niels is in jail, he finally would go on to face his second trial after, you know, so much uproar came about this, where families were pressuring them to do research into what was happening. And during the second trial, a senior doctor, he would go on to describe Niels as a passionate medic who made a good impression on the staff. So they're still trying to cover up for him. They're still saying good things to give a reason why they didn't turn him in. However, the doctor did note that he always seemed to be around when patients needed to be resuscitated and often assisted in that. So, like, yeah, he's just always there, I guess. It seems to be their response. But in the beginning, Niels went so far as to swear on his daughter's life that he had never killed anyone. Like, he blatantly was just telling everyone, like, no, I don't kill people. This might have been an accident. I swear on my daughter's life. And he's fucking lying. He's lying big time. Because in the end, Niels at this point admits to a psychiatrist that he had been intentionally injecting drugs into patients at random in order to cause cardiac arrest. He admitted that he was bored and that he enjoyed the feeling of being able to resuscitate a person. He referred to his skills as excellent.
Of course he does.
And the most shocking part of what he announces to the psychiatrist is he admits that he caused the death of at least 30 patients. And he says, well, at least 60 more survived what I did. 30, 60, like, he's admitting to this. I did this to this many people, but at least 60 people survived. And
so it's not all that bad.
Right? Niels said, quote, usually the decision to do it was relatively spontaneous.
That's not what you want to hear at all.
It is and it's not. So
I mean, I don't want
referring back to his modus operandi, like his MO, you know, like we said with Ted Bundy, a girl, this color hair, this certain age, you're seeing a guy who's in a hospital, you're thinking, okay, maybe he picks up a certain patient who has cancer or is like on the brink of death. And in reality, he's saying, no, it literally was just anybody who I had the opportunity to do it to, and it struck me at the moment.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd rather that or me to be his type. I can't tell.
He goes on to say in his trial, like, if his first attempt at resuscitating someone was successful, he would feel really good, and he would sometimes go on to make a second attempt. So whether this means on a different patient or the same patient is up to debate. He could have done this to one person, saved them, and was like, I feel really good, and then gone down to another patient and done it again so he could do another resuscitation, could save another person's life. Or, well, according to Christian Marbach, who is the grandson of one of the possible victims, he said his grandfather had been recovering from like a regular surgery.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything that was life-taking. He wasn't like dying from cancer. He was just there with a regular thing that he should have gone better for and gone home. But instead, he ended up suffering a cardiac arrest.
Oh.
He ended up getting revived. He survived it, only later to have another one, and he died. So essentially, the grandson says Niels killed his grandfather twice.
I can't imagine going through that.
So again, it's not about life saving. To him, he really doesn't care if you come back or not, because like he just wants to keep doing it. However, Niels would go on to claim that each time he brought someone back that he felt really euphoric and he felt great. But whenever someone died, he claimed to be devastated. And he'd say, well, I would decide not to do it ever again. And yet in a couple days, maybe a couple hours, that feeling would just creep back up on me and I would be right back doing it again. It was, however, during this trial when he finally admitted that he had not only attacked patients at his most recent hospital, but that he had committed these acts at Oldenburg too. So far, everyone's just concentrating on the last hospital he worked at.
Yeah.
Not even realizing this guy has a extensive 15-year medical background. So
they have to go way back in the records for this one.
Yeah.
And in February 2015, during his second trial, he was found guilty of 2 murders and 2 attempted murders. He's finally handed down a sentence for life in prison. But in Germany, there are no consecutive sentences, and people who are serving life sentences are considered for parole after 15 years.
Which I find just crazy. How do you give a life sentence and then turn around and say, but in 15 years, you might be out?
Yeah, I don't get that at all. I mean, it's a life sentence, it's a life sentence.
You should be protecting your citizens, not thinking about how you can, save a murderer.
That's what the court system's there for. But the news was out. Here was a nurse openly admitting to purposely risking people's lives.
Yeah, and a lot of them at that.
Just so he could play the hero. But the numbers weren't adding up. He hadn't been saving many people at all. Numbers of potential deaths began to circulate. Was it the 30 he admitted to? Was it 40, 50, maybe 100 people? So authorities quickly found themselves spurned to an ever-widening investigation. They needed records, they needed bodies, and they needed proof.
Yep, you can't do nothing unless you can prove it.
According to the press release given by the Oldenburg Police Department, a large number of investigations had to be opened in order to decipher the extent of Niels' work. So now we're going to list their actions and what they found. The police had to evaluate more than 800 rescue protocols.
God, so many.
As well as over 500 patient records. And they initiated 332 criminal cases on suspicion of murder.
So I don't want to blame the police for not catching this, because as soon as they finally get involved, they go above and beyond, clearly.
Yeah, they really, really do. And these are just the sheer amount of numbers that the police are dealing with. It's mind-boggling. There were 289 medical expert opinions given on more than 50 cases. And over 10,000 man-hours went into exhuming 134 bodies over 67 cemeteries in Germany, Poland, and Turkey.
Yeah, in fact, many of the victims' family members didn't even realize that their loved ones may have been murdered until, literally the police are knocking on their door and announcing that they're going to exhume their loved one for testing. Hey, we just want to double check they weren't murdered by this guy. And that's when they find out. Like I said, in Germany, the media and the laws, they're very good about hiding names of not only witnesses, but the actual person on trial. It's a better way of hey, you were on trial and then you were found not guilty, so your life's not freaking ruined. But, that also keeps people from realizing what's going on in their community.
Yeah.
So these people had no idea. And then, 10 years later, they get a knock on the door and it's hey, by the way, we want to dig up your grandma or your dad or your sister. We just want to double check she wasn't just murdered.
Yeah, and it's just, kind of terrifying with that. And, you have all these bodies that are trying to exhume. But you have so many more cases where the potential victims were cremated. And as of that, the police don't have a record. Just cremated, no body.
Yeah, there's literally nothing you can do at this point. There's nothing left to test that can show that they were injected with something that killed them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think like cremations are on the rise. It's cheaper and more people are doing it, but then it leaves nothing behind. There's nothing to prove.
And when people survived, and they didn't have a follow-up blood test, again, no record. There's no case on that one.
Yeah, he outright admitted that at least 60 people survived his attacks. And this is at the point where he's not even admitting to the actual numbers of people he really did things to. So what can you do? If you were with Niels Hoegel 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and you just happen to suffer some chest pains, you can't test it now.
Yeah, no, you can't.
And they probably didn't do a blood test then after that happened.
Some of them seem to, but not all of them. And for Oldenburg, the police had 119 investigations initiated. 35 bodies were exhumed, and in the end, they found that 36 deaths were almost certainly attributed to Niels' actions. In 9 of his murders, he used algamuline. In 3 of them, he used a drug called Sodalex. In 12 murders, he used lidocaine.
Yeah, we know that one.
In 7 murders, people died from an overdose of potassium chloride. And in 2 murders, he used a drug called Cortidex.
Yeah, so basically it's just whatever drug that's going to cause a cardiac arrest that he can get his hands on. He's not like some other killers where it's like this one drug.
Yeah. And when it came to investigating his time at Delmenhorst, they had to initiate 200 special investigations that included 99 exhumations.
Can you imagine being the guy that's got to go through all these fucking exhumations and doing the tests? Like, these are old bodies.
Yeah.
This is not a fun job.
I'm not wanting to do that at all. No. This led police, though, to believe that he murdered at least 48 people during his time there. He murdered 29 people with algamuline. In 4 cases, he once again used Sodalex. And in 12 cases, he used lidocaine. They did do investigations into his time as a nurse at Wilhelmshaven, as well as his time as a paramedic from 98 to 2000, as well as his time paramedic again back in 08. They also investigated his part-time work from 07 to 08 when he worked in the nursing homes in Wilhelmshaven and Friedberg. But they found no evidence of proof to conclude that he was involved with any murders during that time. Also, there's something to do with statute of limitations when it comes to Wilhelmshaven.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are just too old for the court to actually kind of go back for.
Well, okay, most of the time statute of limitations is like 7, 10, 12 years. He was working at that first hospital in the 90s.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're going to go back and find those bodies.
And sometimes those records don't even exist.
The record, who knows what's going on and if they were covering for him or not. Then to top it off, you've got paramedic work. So, things that are usually like on the scene, just what are you to say is actually happening? They only have so much they can do until you get someone at a hospital.
Yeah.
And then finally, he was working at an old person's home where people expect you to fucking have cardiac arrests. Like, it's just oh, Bob had a heart attack. Oh, shit, that really sucks. But nobody's like, oh, was it murder?
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of people really need to pay attention to that part because it took people's families going, hey, there might be a connection. And maybe people need to, double check back into that because it just seems to me like he's already on the run. He already knows that they're going to catch him. He's just biding his time until he goes to court.
Yeah.
So if you're a killer who can't even go days without killing, and then suddenly you're offered the position in an old person's home where nobody is literally paying attention to you, I think we are missing a good number of deaths here.
Very probably. In total, though, police had come to suspect Niels could be tied to 90 murders.
Yeah, so at least they can definitely say 90 murders.
And they conducted 6 interrogations with Niels, where he admitted to a large number of cases, but in most cases, he could no longer concretely remember his actions.
I happen to kill so many people, I don't remember them.
And then, the terrifying thing is he says he chooses his patients and his victims at random. They could be anywhere from 34 to 96 years old.
And that was the range of his killings.
Yeah, so hospital people, everybody.
So, psychiatrists evaluated Niels so that he could go on trial again, because at this point, they're like, oh, maybe he's just absolutely crazy. We better reevaluate him. But he did end up being competent to stand trial. However, they note that they thought he suffered from personality disorders, including lack of shame, guilt, regrets, empathy. He's unable to do any of this. They just dubbed him a narcissist who did not see his victims as people. His world revolved around him. So then it was in October 2018 that Niels Hoegel went on to face his third murder trial.
Jeez, third trial.
Yep, and under the accusation of killing 100 people. They can say, we legit think that we could prove you killed these 100 people. That's not saying everyone he touched. And this time in this court, they actually had to hold it in a much larger facility in order to contain all the family members of the victims that Niels was being accused of killing, along with the media that's finally paying attention. It's really hard to even find any kind of article back from 2008 when he was first facing trial.
And that's funny because it's only 10 years ago, but it's just the way they are.
It's just the fact that it didn't seem to gain that much attention when a nurse happened to get caught for killing 2 people, when a lot of people go, well, you never know, it could have been an accident.
Yeah.
Now they're paying attention. Now we're hitting possible hundreds of people that he might have killed. This time in this third trial is the first time that Niels actually ever even shows signs of regret. The previous trials, you'll see him constantly covering his face so that you can't see pictures of him. He seems to continuously say, I didn't kill anyone. I swear on my daughter's, life.
Yeah, he's trying to cover himself still.
Yeah, and so he never said sorry at those trials. He never looked sad. He never looked, regretful. And suddenly, now he's kind of showing these signs. But a week before his sentencing, Niels went so far as to say, quote, I want to apologize wholeheartedly to every single one of you for what I have done over the year, end quote. He went on to claim that he had finally realized the amount of suffering his actions had caused. Now remember,
he did, yeah.
He's already been sitting in jail, and he wasn't sorry then. He's suddenly sorry now. Yeah, same way we feel about that. Yeah, really, dude? So did a lot of the people who got that apology. They felt like it was simply a cop-out. Many felt he was a competent liar who had clearly hidden the previous murders and all those trials up until he literally couldn't deny it anymore. And they said, we think you did this. And he's like, yeah, I did it. So basically, they didn't believe his apology. They thought that he was lying then, he's lying now. In fact, one of the prosecuting lawyers told the local newspaper, quote, he only acted out of his remorse to gather plus points. He should have stayed silent.
Yeah, that definitely is true.
On June 6, 2019, the court in Oldenburg found Niels guilty in the murder of 85 people. So 15 couldn't quite be proven enough for him to get that. But
I still think 85.
85 plus the 6, yeah, I think we got him.
Carry the 9 and...
This time, they give him another life sentence, but this time it comes with the way that the judge does it is he doesn't get the chance of parole in 15 years.
He doesn't deserve it.
He doesn't deserve it. In fact, I think, again, comparing it to what would happen in America, a lot of people like to point out the fact that if this had happened here, with the number of deaths he had committed, he would have been facing up to 1,275-year jail sentence. Which is basically retarded because, nobody's living that long, and
keep them alive, though.
It's just something to say, years to give people the feeling of I at least got my justice, my numbers, for my loved one.
It's there's
the years. But in reality, most likely, if he'd been here, we would have given him the death penalty.
Yeah, definitely.
This is a monster. We can't let him out of this cage. In fact, he's in a cage with other people that he doesn't need to have any way to be with them anyways.
Yeah, any contact with them at all.
You don't let a rabid dog just run the streets, and you don't leave him in a cage for the rest of its life.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I know a lot of people disagree with the death penalty, and clearly there are countries that don't do it anymore. But, here again, we have a monster who, he killed, and he will never stop killing if he has the opportunity.
Yep.
Judge Sebastian Berman, who was overseeing this third trial, said in his closing remarks, your deeds are indescribable and so many that human understanding capitulates beneath the sheer number. This man sounds dapper as hell.
That's okay. Yeah. I like this judge. This judge and the judge for Carl.
Yeah, and I think evidently the number of these deaths, the number of cases he had to go through, it really did actually affect the judge. How can it not? And in the end, he said he felt like a bookkeeper of death.
Oh, that's a terrifying...
How could you not? You're sitting there as a judge in your robes going over death after death after death, and you're the one to judge it. Yeah, you're the fucking bookkeeper, man. It sucks. Niels' final response to the victims' families was just to say sorry again. He said, quote, "I hope you find peace through this verdict. Regret and shame are my companions now." Yeah, motherfucker, you're gonna be in jail. That's the only one you get.
Time, buddy. But that doesn't end this tale. After this trial made it painfully clear that 2 hospitals clearly participated in covering Niels' actions up, multiple former staff members are under investigation, with 2 doctors, 1 nursing director, and his deputy already facing charges.
Yeah, like we said, this should have never occurred. The first time, especially like Oldenburg Hospital, knew exactly what something was wrong, knew that people were dying to the point that they had to remove him from any contact with patients, and then they still went out of their way to provide him glowing recommendations.
Yeah, it's just us being complicit with it. 4 witnesses are also facing trial of perjury because when they were questioned, they were answered in a way that seemed deflective. Again, I probably should have said something a decade ago, but I didn't.
I don't even think it's
and now it's catching up with me.
I don't even think it's just that. It's like the doctor that was like, well, I didn't really notice. I just, it was a little odd, but I thought, like you clearly, but you were interacting with him every day, and weren't you the one that nicknamed him, Death Hoegel?
Yeah.
There were enough people, but then when they get on the stand, they're very deflective because they realize that they have something to hide. So they're literally 4 witnesses are suddenly going to be facing trial.
Yeah, and in the end here, we will never know just how many people Niels had killed. Some suspect that number can be upwards of 200 people.
Yeah, some people are even saying 300. Because, again, you never know. Not everyone died. And not every case where people did die was looked at suspiciously.
Yeah. At the very least, what we can kind of walk away with is that this monster's behind bars, and he won't have access to people that he can affect anymore. Not at least in the same way he normally does.
Yeah, no. So you didn't pass out, but that's it.
No, I'm very close to it.
That is what I hate to call Angel of Death. He is a killer nurse who happens to be one of the most prolific serial killers outside of wartime in Germany to be seen. And people are freaking out. The one place you're supposed to be safe, and here are monsters that we're catching who got away with it for a long time.
Yeah, that just terrifies me. So, if any of you are just like me, I'm sorry you had to sit through that.
Guess you're not going to the hospital for a couple scratches and boo-boos anymore, are you?
No, there's a reason I don't carry insurance. Another excuse not to go.
But I think that's good enough for us. I think that's going to do it for this week. And we just want to remind you guys, thank you for listening. We appreciate you. Watch out for yourselves and be careful, obviously.
Don't go anywhere near doctors, guys.
Yeah, you know what? Just
avoid
start
them all.
Taking a lot of Tylenol and taking some straight liquor. I'm sure that'll just preserve your insides, right?
Remember, YOLO, don't go near doctors.
All right, you guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming by.
See you guys.
Bye.